dare enter, a place forgotten by time, where shadows breathe, and the dead still remember. Sit, watch, and do not look away.
There are places in Colorado where silence feels heavier, where the trees don't move even when the wind cuts hard, where the roads lose their names and the maps forget to follow. I found one of those places in late November, a stretch of forest in western Maine, all pine and rock and sky. The cabin wasn't much. A single room, wood stove in the center, one flickering bulb, and a porch with a view of nothing but trees. The kind of place built by someone who wanted to be forgotten. That's why I took it. 3 weeks, no phone, no people, no noise. A break from the world. A break from what happened. The key was under a loose stone. The porch sagged when I stepped on it. Inside, it smelled like wood rot and stale air. But I didn't care. It was mine. I lit the stove, unpacked my gear, and cracked a warm beer while the sun slept behind the trees. No cell service. No neighbors. Just me in the dark. I made it till about 1:30 a.m. before I heard the first sound. It wasn't loud. Just a faint scrape, like something brushing the side of the cabin. Not wind, the trees were still. Not an animal, the sound was deliberate. I sat up in bed listening. Nothing. Then again, scrape, drag, escape. I stepped to the window and looked out. Black. Pitch black. Even the moon was hiding. Still, the sound came again, closer now. Like someone walking barefoot through pine needles, dragging something behind them. I held my breath. And then it stopped. I waited 5 full minutes before I moved. Nothing. No knock. No voice. No reason. I told myself it was a branch in the wind. A raccoon maybe. But I still slid the bolt across the door and set the hatchet beside my bed. Just in case. I didn't sleep. Not really. But morning came anyway, a weak gray light that bled across the floor like it was too tired to try. I stepped out onto the porch, coffee in hand. Frost on the ground. And something else. Marks. Thin grooves in the dirt that led from the woods to my front steps. Long. Straight. Like fingernails. Dragging. I stared at them until the coffee went cold. Something had been here. And it wanted me to know. The second night was colder. Not just outside, in the bones of the place. Even with the stove burning steady, the chill crept through the cabin like it had a purpose. Like it was searching for somewhere to settle. I spent most of the day trying to convince myself there was a reasonable explanation for the marks outside. An animal. A trick of the frost. Hell, maybe some old debris dragged loose in the wind. But when I walked the perimeter, I didn't find anything out of place. Just trees. Silent. Still. Watching. Around dusk, the sky turned red. Not warm, sunset red. Sick red. Like a wound. It lingered too long behind the pines, bleeding light through the window until everything inside looked rusted. I locked the door early. Triple-checked the bolt. Moved the small bookshelf in front of it for good measure. I even nailed the window shut. Overkill maybe, but the kind of overkill that makes your hands stop shaking. I told myself I wouldn't drink that night. Needed to stay sharp. But when midnight hit and the scraping started again, slower this time, I cracked a bottle and didn't stop until it was half empty. The sound circled the cabin. not pacing. Searching. At 1:42 a.m., something knocked on the back wall. Once. Then silence. I held my breath. Then, another knock. Softer. Lower down. Then another. Moving. Along the baseboards. Like someone crawling. And then, just as I reached for the hatchet, a whisper. Directly behind me. Don't look. I spun around, weapon raised. No one. Just the mirror. And something written in fog across the glass. You saw me. At first I thought I imagined it. The knocking under the floor. But it came again. Knock. 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 Slow. Precise. Right beneath my feet. I froze. The flashlight trembled in my hand as I pointed it toward the floorboards. They looked solid, old but solid. No crawl space beneath the cabin. Just packed earth and stone. No room for anything to be down there. Except something was. The knocking moved from one side of the cabin to the other as if it were walking, pacing. Then it stopped. And a voice, muffled and low, drifted up through the wood. La mienne. Not whispered. Not screamed. Spoken. Clear and hollow. It was my voice. That did it. I backed toward the door, boots slipping on the warm planks. Hatchet in one hand, flashlight in the other. I reached for the lock and froze. Something brushed the back of my neck. Cold. Dry. I spun, swinging the hatchet blindly, but nothing was there. Just air. Just dark. Just silence. But it had touched me. I could feel the residue. Like ash. Like spiderwebs. I slammed the door bolt into place, dragged the table in front of it, then grabbed every damn thing I could find, chairs, boxes, firewood, and stacked it high. Then I sat in the corner, facing the door, heart thundering in my ears. The voice came again, this time from the window. Still using my voice. La mienne. I didn't answer. Couldn't. I just shook, gripping the hatchet so tight my knuckles cracked. There were no footsteps. No breathing. But I could feel it moving. All around the cabin. Dragging those claws across the walls. Waiting. Then, from the woods, a scream. Not human. Not animal. Something in between. It echoed through the trees like it was searching for someone who didn't belong. Like it had found me. And it wasn't going to leave. I stayed in that corner until sunrise. Didn't sleep. Didn't blink. The scream had faded, but the silence it left behind was worse, too deep, too thick. The kind of quiet that presses in on your skull, like the woods are holding their breath. At first light, I finally moved. I peeled the table and chairs from the door, inch by inch, then opened it just enough to see outside. Nothing. But the trees felt wrong. Twisted somehow. As if they'd leaned in overnight, like they were craning their necks to watch. The grooves in the dirt were deeper now. More of them. Not just leading to the cabin, they circled it. Looped around it again and again. Hundreds of them. I stepped outside. And that's when I saw it. A small bundle resting on the edge of the porch. Wrapped in bark. Tied with hair. My hair. I didn't have to open it. I could smell what was inside. Meat. Bone. Something wet and recent. I kicked it into the woods and ran back inside, bolting the door behind me. I wanted to scream, to throw up, to leave, but there was nowhere to go. The truck was still dead. The radio still silent. No one was coming. That afternoon, I found something else. The mirror in the cabin, a dusty thing above the sink, was fogged. Not from heat, not from breath. Just fogged. In the center, drawn with a fingertip, was a word. Soon. I wiped it off with my sleeve, broke the mirror off the wall, shoved it under the bed, and covered it with a blanket. But I still saw the word. Every time I blinked. Every time I closed my eyes. That night, it didn't wait for darkness. At 5:42 p.m., just as the sun began to dip, something slammed against the back wall. Once. Then again. The whole cabin shook. I grabbed the shotgun, crept to the window. Outside, the snow was falling heavy, almost horizontal with the wind. But I could see it. A shape in the white. Tall. Thin. Facing the cabin. Then it dropped to all fours. And ran. Not away. Not toward me. Just around. Circling. Faster and faster. The snow swirled with it as if the storm had a center, and that center was it. And then, silence. Total, perfect silence. Even the wind stopped. I didn't dare breathe. Then came the whisper. Not outside this time. Inside. Directly behind me. Soon. I spun around, shotgun raised. Nothing. Just the empty cabin. The dim glow from the stove. The boards I'd nailed over the windows. But I knew what I heard. It had been inside. Right behind me. I backed toward the center of the room, turning in slow circles, every muscle locked. The whisper hadn't come from the door, or the window. It had come from above. I looked up. The ceiling hatch. I'd barely noticed it since I moved in, just a square cut in the boards, leading to an attic I never planned to use. The string that dangled from it was swaying. Slowly. Side to side. Like it had just been touched. My breath fogged the air. I didn't want to check. Didn't want to know. But I also couldn't let it stay. So I grabbed the hatchet, dragged the chair under the hatch, and climbed. 1 foot. Then the other. My fingers found the string. I pulled. The hatch opened with a groan. And something fell out. Not onto the floor. not onto me. Just a smell. Wet fur. Rotting leaves. And under it all, something sour and metallic. Blood. I pointed the flashlight into the opening. The beam shook as I raised it. And there, just beyond reach, two shapes reflected the light. Eyes. Watching. Motionless. No pupils. No lids. Just open. Too wide. Too still. I didn't wait to see what they did. I slammed the hatch shut and drove a nail through the frame. Then another. And another. Until the chair was covered in bent metal and splinters. Whatever was up there, it wasn't getting down again. That night, I slept in the closet. It was the only place without a window. I sat wedged between coats and boxes, shotgun in one hand, lantern in the other, praying the light would last. I don't know if I slept, but I dreamed. A forest of bone. A sky that bled. And trees that whispered with voices I recognized. My mother, my best friend, my own voice saying things I never said. When I opened my eyes, the closet was dark. The lantern had gone out. But there, in the narrow slice of light beneath the door, a shadow. Long. Still. Waiting. I didn't move. Didn't breathe. And eventually it left. But it didn't go far. I could hear it pacing the cabin. One slow step at a time. Scraping its fingers across the walls. Humming. My voice. It was humming in my voice. I stayed in the closet until morning. Not because I thought it was safe. That illusion had died days ago. But because I didn't know what else to do. When the light finally crept through the boarded windows, I pushed open the door slowly, heart hammering. The cabin looked normal. Too normal. Nothing broken. No footprints. No blood. But I could feel it. That pressure in the air. That thick, suffocating rawness. I checked the hatch, still nailed shut. Checked the doors, still locked. But when I looked out the window, the woods were different. Not just the way they looked, though the snow seemed blackened, heavy, like it had soaked up ash, but the way they felt. Like the trees had gotten closer. Like the cabin was shrinking. Like the world outside was holding its breath. I put on my boots and stepped out to sea. The air smelled burned. The silence was wrong. And then I saw the trail. Not the one I made. A new one. It circled the cabin. A trench in the snow, like something had crawled on its belly all night long, dragging its ribs, its elbows, its teeth. The trail ended at the front steps. Then vanished. No prints going back. Just a single symbol carved into the snow with something sharp. An eye. Slitted like a cat's. Bleeding at the corners. I covered it with my boot and turned back inside. I needed to leave. Hike out. Drive. Anything. But when I stepped outside again, no more than 10 minutes later, the trail was gone. Not just the crawl marks. Everything. The snow was untouched. Pristine. Like the forest had healed. Or hidden. I slammed the door shut and locked it again. I was done trying to rationalize. Done pretending. This wasn't a haunting. It wasn't madness. It was something else. Something older. I didn't eat that day. Couldn't. My stomach turned at the thought of food. So I sat, staring at the fire, watching the smoke curl up into the rafters like it was trying to escape. And then, just as dusk began to crawl in through the cracks, I heard it again. From under the floorboards. Breathing. Slow. Wet. Close. Like it had been hiding beneath me all day. Waiting. I didn't move. Didn't even blink. I just sat there, frozen, listening to the thing breathe beneath the floorboards, like it was inches away. Like the only thing separating us was a layer of old pine and dirt. Then it stopped. A long silence. And then, a voice. Muffled. Gurgling. It came from directly beneath my feet. "Can I come up now?" I bolted to my feet and backed into the corner, clutching the hatchet like it would do any good. The fire hissed low behind me. And then the boards creaked. Right under the hearth. Like something was pushing up from underneath. One plank shifted. Lifted, just slightly. Not enough to break free. Just enough to let me know it could. And then, tapping. Fingernails. Or claws. Knocking from below. Tap. 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 I ran. Out the front door into the cold, not even stopping to grab a coat. The snow bit through my shirt like knives, but I didn't care. I ran straight into the woods. Didn't look back. Didn't breathe until I hit the tree line. There, I crouched low behind a fallen log, chest heaving, every nerve in my body screaming. The cabin sat quiet. Dark. Smoke still curling from the chimney. Like nothing had happened. Like it was waiting. Then, from the side of the house, movement. A figure stepped out of the shadows. Tall. Thin. Wearing my face. Exactly. Down to the jacket I'd left hanging on the chair. It stood on the porch, scanning the trees. Then it called out, in my voice. "Hey, where'd you go?" It laughed. Soft. Cruel. Like it was trying the voice on for size. Then it stepped back inside and shut the door behind it. And I realized something I hadn't let myself believe until that moment. I wasn't alone at night. Not anymore. Now, something else was in there. Pretending to be me. I didn't go back to the cabin that night. I stayed out in the woods, huddled under a tarp of frozen branches, listening for footsteps that never came. The snow soaked through my clothes. My fingers went numb. But I stayed. Better cold than dead. Or worse, replaced. By the time the sun rose, pale and anemic behind a wall of clouds, I was shivering so hard I could barely stand. But I made my way back anyway. I had to know. The cabin looked the same. No footprints in the snow. No signs of movement. But the front door was closed again, locked from the inside. I circled around, checked the windows. Curtains drawn. Fire dead. I knocked. Once. Nothing. Then twice more. Still nothing. I picked up a stone and smashed the window nearest the door, reached inside and popped the lock. I stepped in slowly, hatchet raised. The cabin was empty. Clean. The boards by the hearth were undisturbed. The chair was right where I'd left it. The coat I'd seen the thing wearing, gone. But on the table, something new. A notebook. One I didn't own. Inside, drawings. Hundreds of them. Pages filled with charcoal sketches of me. Sleeping, eating, staring out the window. Pages and pages of my face, over and over again, each one more distorted than the last. The final page was different. It was blank, except for a sentence, scrawled in jagged handwriting. Not yet, but almost. I tore the pages out and burned them in the stove. The cabin filled with the stench of old ink and scorched paper. But the smell beneath it was worse. Like wet fur. And meat. Like something had been living here while I was gone. Something pretending. Watching. Practicing. I packed my things in silence. Didn't stop. Didn't rest. Just loaded everything into my truck and turned the key. Dead. Battery gutted. Cables gone. Torn to shreds like they'd been chewed. I was stranded. With the thing that wore my skin. And I had no idea how long before it came back. I left the truck behind and started walking. Didn't care that the snow was waist deep in places. Didn't care that the wind clawed at my face like it was trying to peel me apart. I just walked. West. Toward town. Or what I hoped was town. The map was in the glove box, but I wasn't going back for it. Every instinct screamed to keep moving. Whatever had been in that cabin was getting closer. I could feel it. A pressure behind the eyes. A breath that didn't belong in my lungs. Like something was stepping in time with me, just a beat too late. I walked until my legs locked. Until my socks froze stiff inside my boots. Until the trees changed. That was the first real sign. They were too straight now. Too evenly spaced. Like rows of teeth lining a throat. I stopped. Listened. And the forest exhaled. It wasn't the wind. It wasn't an animal. It was the sound of something breathing around me. I turned slowly. And the trees moved. Not all at once. Just the slightest twitch. The illusion of stillness breaking apart. Then, something stepped from between them. Not a person. Not quite. It wore skin like clothes, hung too loose, joints folding wrong. Its head cocked. Its smile split too wide. My smile. It looked exactly like me. Except the eyes. Black. Hollow. Ron. I backed away. It stepped forward. Not fast. Not aggressive. Just deliberate. Like it had all the time in the world. It didn't speak. Didn't need to. Because, in my mind, in that raw, shaking place just behind reason, I heard it whisper. You're tired. And I was. God help me, I was so tired. But I raised the hatchet anyway. It paused. Head tilted. Studying. Learning. And then it smiled wider, not with cruelty, but with something like affection. Like it pitied me. It didn't move again. Just stepped backward. Melted into the trees. Gone. Like it had never been there at all. But it had. And it would be back, because it was getting closer. And now it knew the path. I kept walking. Didn't matter that I could barely feel my legs anymore. Didn't matter that the sun had started to drop again, turning the sky that same sick gray I'd seen too many times before. I couldn't stop. The woods weren't safe, not anymore. Maybe they never were. But now they knew me, and I wasn't just being followed. I was being worn down. Somewhere behind me, branches cracked, rhythmically. Too clean. Too timed. Not like an animal thrashing. Not like a person stumbling. It was mimicry. It was learning how to walk like me. How to sound like me. And worst of all, how to think like me. Every so often, I'd hear my own voice behind me. Sometimes saying nothing but my name. Sometimes whispering things I almost believed. You can't go back. No one's looking for you. You were always meant to be alone. I pressed my hands over my ears. Didn't help. The voice was inside now. In the marrow. In the quiet between heartbeats. The sun dipped low enough to vanish behind the pines. Darkness rose like a tide. And ahead, finally, a flicker of light. A window. Warm. Golden. A house. Maybe a cabin. Maybe something worse. But it was the only structure I'd seen in days. So I ran. Stumbled. Collapsed into the snow just feet from the porch. A man stepped out. Middle-aged, bearded, rough clothes, rifle slung over one shoulder. He stared at me for a long moment. Then, with no expression at all, helped me to my feet and led me inside. The heat hit like a brick wall. I nearly cried. He sat me down near the stove, handed me a mug of something steaming, whiskey and broth and something else I couldn't name. I tried to speak. He shook his head. "Not yet," he said. Not unkindly. Just firmly. He stared at the door for a long moment before speaking again. "They follow the lonely ones," he said. the broken ones. Then he turned toward me, and for the first time I saw his eyes. Tired. Hollow. Not afraid, but something worse. Familiar. "You hear the voice yet?" he asked. I nodded. He didn't flinch. Just sipped from his mug. Then he said something I'll never forget. "Don't ever let it speak with your mouth." And then the floor creaked behind me. Another footstep. Another me. I froze. The man didn't move. His eyes stayed locked on the doorway behind me, the hallway that led to the back of the cabin. We both knew what was coming, what had followed me here. The mimic. The thing that wore skin like clothing and voices like masks. It stepped closer. I could hear its breath now, slow, rattling, like a bad memory dragging itself across the floor. I turned my head just enough to see the shadow stretching long and thin across the wooden floorboards. Too long. The joints bent wrong. And then it spoke. In my voice. "Don't worry," it whispered. I locked the back door. I looked at the man, the one who'd saved me. He didn't flinch, didn't even blink. He just whispered, "It doesn't know the rules yet." "What rules?" I croaked. "The rules of being human." He stood up slowly, walked to the kitchen counter, picked up a small wooden box. Inside, salt. Old, blackened around the edges. He handed me a handful and nodded toward the door. "You've seen it," he said. "Now you have to name it." My throat tightened. "Skinwalker?" He shook his head. "Don't say it, it's not that, that's just what people call it, but if it's learned your name, if it's worn your voice, then it's yours now, only you can send it back." I stared at the handful of salt. It burned cold in my palm. Behind me, the thing laughed. Again, my voice. "He's lying," it said. "He wants you scared." The man didn't react. "You have to reject it," he said. "Force it out, deny it." "But how?" "Salt, fire, truth." He pointed toward the fireplace. "You brought it in," he said. "Now burn it out." Behind me, the mimic stepped into the room. I didn't turn. I didn't need to. I felt it smiling. I walked toward the fireplace, slow, careful, salt clutched tight in my hand. The mimic followed. Its footsteps weren't quite right. The rhythm was just a little too perfect, like someone who'd heard walking but never done it. And its breathing never changed, no matter how close it got. The fire had burned low, just red embers and occasional flickers. I knelt beside it. The mimic stopped 3 feet behind me. "You're tired," it said, still wearing my voice. "You've been running too long. You don't have to anymore. I can take it from here." I almost believed it. That's how good it was. I could feel its hunger, not for flesh, but for place. For presence. It didn't want to kill me. It wanted to be me. That was worse. I reached into the embers with the fire poker, pushed the logs apart, made space. Then I stood. I turned. And I looked at it. It looked just like me. Same face, same jacket, same tired eyes. But the skin was wrong, stretched too tight like a mask over a hollow frame. And the eyes, they didn't blink. I held up the salt. It flinched. So I stepped closer. "You want to be me?" I said. It smiled. Yes. I tossed the salt right into its chest. The thing shrieked. Smoke poured from the wound. Its flesh cracked open, black veins boiling to the surface. Its face melted, lips peeling back in a grin that split too wide. I grabbed the fire poker and drove it into the mimic's side, pushing it backward toward the fireplace. It screamed, not in my voice now, but in every voice it had stolen. Dozens. Hundreds. Layered. Male. Female. Children. It hit the hearth. Stumbled. And then fell in. The fire roared to life. White hot. Hungry. The mimic flailed once, twice, then caught. Its body curled inward, folding like paper in flame. And then it was gone. No smoke. No ash. Just silence. And the smell of burnt pine. The silence afterward was unnatural. No wind. No creaks from the old wood. No calls from the woods outside. Just quiet. Too quiet. I stood in the cabin center, gripping the fire poker with blistered hands, listening for something, anything, that might tell me it wasn't over. But there was nothing. No whispers. No dragging footsteps. No mimic voice begging to be let in. I collapsed into the old chair, muscles trembling, heart jackhammering in my chest. I stared at the fire. It burned clean now, bright and sharp and ordinary. Normal. But that word had lost its meaning. Normal didn't include things wearing your skin. Didn't include voices that weren't real. Didn't include something watching you through the walls. But even so, the mimic was gone. It had to be. I'd watched it burn. Heard it scream. Felt it die. So why couldn't I stop shaking? Why did the shadows still feel too deep? Why did the mirror above the dresser still show two reflections? I stood slowly. Walked across the room. My reflection followed, same motion, same expression, perfect. But when I stopped, it didn't. It kept walking. One step. Two. And then it grinned. Not my grin. Its grin. The skin bubbled. The eyes went dark. And it raised one hand, pale clawed, dripping with something black, and pressed it against the inside of the glass. I stepped back. Stumbled. Fell against the wall. And the mirror shattered. The sound was like bone snapping. Shards flew across the room, slicing through the air like razors. One caught my cheek. Warm blood dripped to the floor. And from the center of the shattered mirror where the mimic had stood, a hole. Not a crack. Not damage. A literal hole. Like the glass had been nothing more than a veil. And now it was open. Inside, there was only darkness. Deep, rolling dark. And something moved within it. Slow. Shifting. Massive. A shape I couldn't name. But I knew what it was. The mimic was never alone. There were more. Always had been. Watching. Waiting. And now one of them had found the way through. I staggered backward, clutching the wall as the darkness behind the broken mirror began to bleed into the room. Not metaphorically, actually bleed. Thick, oozing black poured from the frame, dripping onto the floorboards and hissing where it touched the light. It moved like it was alive, like it was hunting. The air dropped 10 degrees in seconds. The fire sputtered, then roared, like it was trying to fight back. But it wasn't enough. Not this time. Something was coming through. Something worse. I grabbed the shotgun from the wall, loaded the last 2 shells I had, pointed it at the mirror, and pulled the trigger. Boom! Glass exploded. The wall behind it shattered. The mirror was gone. But so was the hole. So was the darkness. So was the thing inside it. Just gone. I stood in the smoke and dust, panting, ears ringing. Had I stopped it? Did I stop it in time? I didn't know. I didn't care. All I knew was I needed to leave. Now. I didn't bother packing. Didn't grab my phone. Didn't turn off the stove. I ran. Out the front door. Into the snow. Didn't look back. Didn't stop running until the cabin was a memory, and the trees began to blur into one endless wall of green and white and silence. But even as I ran, even as I reached the ridge, I heard it again. Behind me. Faint. So faint I could have imagined it. But I didn't. Because I knew the sound. I'd heard it before. That soft, patient knock. Tap. 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 I kept running. The trail beneath my boots barely visible now, lost under fresh snow and shadow. Every branch snagged my jacket, every gust of wind sounded like a whisper just behind my ear. But I didn't stop. Because if I stopped, I knew it would catch up. I didn't know what it was anymore, not really. Skinwalker, demon, echo, just words now. What mattered was simple. It had worn my voice. It had mimicked my thoughts. And last night, it had started to wear my face. I made it to the ranger outpost by mid-afternoon. The lights were off. No smoke from the chimney. But the door was ajar, just a few inches. Not kicked in. Not broken. Just like the cabin that first night. like someone had stepped out. Or something had stepped in. I drew my hatchet and pushed the door open with my foot. The room was silent. Empty. No blood. No signs of a struggle. Just a radio crackling softly in the corner, half buried under snow blown in from the open door. And on the wall, something new. Another symbol. Carved into the wood above the desk. A spiral. Perfect. Precise. Burned into the grain like it had grown there. I backed out. Didn't touch anything. Didn't wait to explain. Just slammed the door shut and kept moving. I didn't want answers anymore. I wanted out. I found the road an hour later. I don't remember how. Maybe instinct. Maybe dumb luck. Either way, I made it. I flagged down a snowplow near mile marker 12, nearly collapsing in front of it. The guy inside was maybe 60, heavy, quiet, chewing something that might have been tobacco. He opened the door, looked me over once, and said, "You look like hell." I climbed in and didn't say a word until we hit the highway. Even then, I only asked one question. "You ever hear of anything out here, something old?" He didn't answer. Just kept driving. Then, just as we hit the county line, he spoke. "Whatever you saw up there," he said slowly, "don't bring it with you." I didn't speak the rest of the ride. The driver dropped me at a gas station on the edge of town, said nothing, and turned the plow back toward the hills. I stood there for a long time, just breathing. The normalcy of it hit hard. Neon signs. Distant hum of traffic. The crunch of gravel under real feet, not echoes. I almost cried. Not from relief. From exhaustion. Because deep down, I knew something followed me. Not physically. Not in the snow. But in the silence between thoughts. In the empty space between footsteps. Something knew me now. And I knew it. I got a motel room with cash. Used a fake name. Didn't turn on the lights. I locked the door, wedged a chair under the knob, and sat in the dark until my eyes adjusted. I didn't sleep. I didn't even try. Instead, I pulled out my notebook, the one I had packed for journaling, for healing, and began to write. Not a story. Not a confession. A list. Everything I remembered. Every detail. Every sound. Every symbol. I wrote for hours, hands shaking, until the pages blurred and the pen ran dry. The next morning, I mailed the notebook to myself. To my real address, 2 states away. Just in case I didn't make it. Just in case I forgot. Because I had a decision to make. And deep down, I knew what it was. I bought supplies. Maps. Fuel. Flashlights. Rope. An old voice recorder from a pawn shop. And a second-hand camcorder that still worked if you hit it hard enough. Then I drove. Not home. Back. Back toward the forest. Back toward the spiral. Back toward the place that had cracked open something in the world and in me. Why? Because if I didn't go back, someone else would. Someone who didn't know the signs. Didn't know the sound. Didn't know not to answer the voice in the trees. This wasn't about revenge or redemption. It was about warning, recording, documenting the things that don't belong on maps. Because maybe, just maybe, if I couldn't stop it, I could at least leave behind something that might help the next poor soul who went looking for silence and found something else. Something older. Something hungry. Something that wears your voice and waits for you to listen. I parked the car 2 miles from the edge of the woods. Didn't want to get too close. Not yet. The snow had melted by now, but the trees still looked wrong. Tilted. Off balance. Like they were leaning in to hear me coming. I stepped out with the camcorder in hand, strapped the recorder to my chest, and clicked them both on. Even if I didn't make it back, I needed a record. Proof. Because part of me still wasn't sure it had all been real. And the other part, the part that knew better, was terrified that it absolutely was. The trail looked the same at first. Moss, pines, old stones. But the deeper I went, the less right it felt. No birds. No squirrels. No wind. Just silence. Not quiet. Dead. And then, the footprints. Small. Bare. Leading the opposite direction I was walking. Coming out of the woods. But they never crossed the path I took in. Almost like they had just appeared. Fresh. Still warm in the soil. I followed them anyway. Yeah, I know. Bad idea. But I couldn't help it. Somehow, I knew they'd take me where I needed to go. Even if that place was hell. By the time I reached the clearing where the spiral had been, the sun was low. Too low. Time was wrong again. Like the forest was twisting it. Stretching it. Playing with it. The spiral was still there, but faint. Faded into the dirt like it had been waiting for me. And in the center of it, something new. Not a body. Not bones. Just a mirror. Shattered. Face down. I picked it up. Held it to my face. And saw myself. Except not. Not quite. Eyes too wide. Smile too still. Something behind me. No, in me. Watching through the glass. I dropped it. Shards scattered in every direction. One landed at my feet, upright, like a blade. Still reflecting that same wrong face. Still smiling. That's when I heard it. From the trees. My voice. calling my name. Not a scream, not a whisper. Just a calm, steady tone. Hey, I know you're tired, come home. I turned off the camera, stopped the recorder, and stood very, very still. Because if I learned anything out here, it's this. The moment you respond, the moment you speak, it gets closer. I didn't answer. Didn't breathe. Didn't blink. My voice, its voice, echoed again from the trees. Closer. Sharper. Come on, you're already here, you know how it ends. Branches creaked somewhere behind me. Not in the wind. No wind. No animals. Just the dry, papery sound of old limbs cracking as something moved through them. Slow. Deliberate. I backed away from the spiral. My boot brushed one of the mirror shards. It tipped, fell flat. The sound was louder than it should have been. Like the whole forest heard it. Like it was listening. Another voice came next. A woman's. Soft. Broken. Please, help me, I don't want to be here anymore. I turned toward it. Reflex. I didn't mean to. I just recognized it. My sister. But it couldn't be. She was in Oregon. She hadn't spoken to me in years. But that voice, it was perfect. Too perfect. And that's when it hit me. The forest wasn't just mimicking people anymore. It was mining me. Pulling out names, memories, sounds I hadn't heard in decades. Using them. Wearing them. Like skins. I took off running. Didn't know where. Didn't care. I just needed to move. Every tree looked the same. The air thickened with each step. My flashlight flickered. Then died. The forest turned to ink. And that's when the whispers started again. Not around me. Inside me. Like they'd been waiting until I was tired enough to hear them clearly. A dozen voices. Maybe more. Let us out. You brought us here. This is your fault. I tripped on a root, hit the ground hard. Rolled onto my back. And there it was. Above me. In the branches. Hanging upside down like a spider. Its limbs too long, too thin. Its face, my face. Mouth stretched wide. Eyes black and endless. It didn't blink. Didn't move. Just watched. And smiled. I scrambled backward, crawling until my back hit a tree. It dropped from the branches without a sound. Stood. Still smiling. Then it spoke. Same voice. Same tone. But this time, no words. Just a low sound. Like wind through hollow bones. like 1,000 screams buried under ice. And I understood what it meant. You'll never leave. It stepped forward. Just one slow, deliberate pace. And I saw the truth of it, saw the thing behind the skin. Because it wasn't me. Not really. The face was too smooth. Like clay molded by shaky hands. The smile too wide, the teeth too straight, like they were carved in bone. It tilted its head, mirroring me, mocking me. And when it spoke again, it wasn't my voice anymore. It was hers. That little girl from the radio. That whisper that started it all. The same high-pitched, lilting tone. You're gonna stay forever. I screamed and threw the flashlight. It passed through the thing. No impact. No sound. Just vanished into mist. And then the thing opened its mouth, wider than should have been possible. Wider than any human jaw. And let out a sound so deep it shook the trees. I turned and ran. The woods folded around me. Trees bending, twisting. The path vanishing beneath my feet. Every step landed on something different. Mud, leaves, ash, glass. I didn't look down. Didn't stop. Only when I burst into a clearing did I let myself breathe. Only then did I realize I'd made it back to the cabin. Only it wasn't the cabin anymore. The windows were wrong. Too tall. The door pulsed, slightly ajar, breathing like a mouth. And above it, carved into the wood, that symbol again. The spiral. But this time, it moved. Not like a carving. Like something alive. Turning. Inward. Pulling. I took a step forward. Something behind the door stirred. Something big. I knew I should run. But I couldn't. Because in that moment, the front door slowly creaked open. And she was standing there. The girl. Not as a whisper. Not a reflection. Not a mimic. The real one. Her hair was wet, her hands dripping, and her eyes empty. She smiled, not cruelly, almost sadly. And then she said, "It's time." I didn't answer. Couldn't. I just stood there at the edge of the clearing, frozen, heart slamming against my ribs like it wanted out. The girl's eyes never left mine. She tilted her head slightly and held out her hand. Palm up. Inviting. The kind of gesture that would have seemed harmless if her fingers hadn't kept moving after she stopped. Twitching. Like something inside her skin was still trying to crawl out. Then she stepped back into the cabin. Without a word. Without a sound. The door stayed open. The invitation still hanging in the cold air like a noose. I knew what I should do. Turn. Run. Keep moving until the road found me, until the forest let go. But something pulled me forward. Curiosity. Desperation. Or maybe just the house itself, calling me back. The porch creaked beneath my boots. Same as always. But the air had changed. Heavier. Thicker. Like walking through smoke and wet cloth. I crossed the threshold, and the door slammed shut behind me. Darkness swallowed everything. No lamps. No moonlight. Only a faint, reddish glow pulsing from the fireplace. It didn't cast shadows. It ate them. I reached for the crowbar at my belt. Gone. So was my flashlight. And the knife I'd kept tucked in my boot. Everything I'd carried. Stripped. As if the house had peeled it off without touching me. In the center of the room was the girl. But she wasn't alone. Shapes circled the edge of the firelight. Tall. Thin. Shifting. Watching. I couldn't see their faces, but I didn't need to. They all had mine. Twisted. Broken. Smiling. And the girl? She was staring into the fire. Whispering. Over and over. He came home. He came home. He came home. And then, all at once, they turned toward me. All of them. The fire flared white, and the room fell away. I was falling. Not through space, through memory. Through myself. The floor vanished, the walls collapsed inward, and I plummeted through a tunnel of flickering images. All mine. All real. But wrong. Twisted. I saw myself in the cabin, chopping wood. Only the axe kept sinking deeper. Into flesh. I saw myself on the porch, smiling. But my eyes were hollow. Dead. I saw myself sleeping, and the girl crawling into bed beside me. Her limbs clicking like broken twigs. Her mouth stitched closed, and still smiling. Then came the whisper. Everywhere at once. Inside me. You're already home. I slammed into the floor. Hard. Wood. Cold. Real. I gasped. Sat up. The cabin again. Daylight through the windows. Fireplace cold and dead. The girl gone. Everything back to normal. Too normal. I stood slowly. The air smelled the same. Rot. Smoke. Dust. But outside. Movement. Something shifted just past the window. I rushed to it. looked out, and froze. The forest was gone, replaced by rows. Dozens, hundreds of cabins, stretching into the horizon, each identical to mine, each one with a figure standing at the door. Each one was me. Every version of me turned, simultaneously, and stared at my window. Eyes black, mouth smiling. They raised their hands in unison and pointed at me. I stumbled back from the glass, fell, hit the floor hard, and the door creaked open behind me. I turned. The girl stood there, but now she looked like me. My face, my body, my eyes. She opened her mouth, and my voice came out. Now you see. She reached forward, and the world tore in half. The cabin split down the center with a sound like tearing cloth and splintering bone. Not a crack, an invitation. I saw two versions of the room peel apart like book pages, each scene shifting and flickering. On the left, the original cabin, quiet and cold. On the right, the twisted mirror version, with shadows crawling across the walls and something pacing behind the stove. I stood on the threshold between two worlds. Behind me, the girl still wore my face, still smiling, still waiting. She whispered again, and this time it came from everywhere. This is where you live now. A pulse shook the floor. From the mirror cabin, something emerged. Tall, clothed in tattered flannel that looked like mine. Its head scraped the ceiling. Its fingers were long and jointless, dragging behind like broken branches. Its face, it was trying to be me, trying to remember me, but it kept getting the details wrong. Too many teeth, eyes too close together, lips stitched to the corners, as if it couldn't decide whether to smile or scream. I backed away. Too fast. Tripped again. Landed on the cold wood, breath knocked out of me. The girl stepped forward. One boot on each side of the split cabin. And said, still with my voice, "You're not alone anymore." I reached for the fireplace poker. Gone. The room had no weapons. No tools. Only the door behind me. Still open. Still leading somewhere. But the air leaking through it smelled like salt and metal. Not wind. Not rain. Not fire. Blood. I stood, braced myself, and ran, not toward the door, not toward the versions of myself or the stitched mimic thing. I ran for the space between. The tear in the cabin floor. The place where reality had peeled open. I jumped. Fell again. Into silence. Into black. And landed on carpet. Old, stained. Hotel carpet. The kind with floral patterns and cigarette burns. I looked up. A hallway. Long. Endless. Dim yellow light overhead. Doors lining both sides. Room after room after room. I turned around. No cabin. No forest. No girl. Only one thing behind me. A sign. Room 237. My room. My name etched on the door. And carved underneath in red. You never left. The hallway stretched forever in both directions, the doors repeating like a glitch in a loop. Each one labeled Room 237. Each one humming quietly, like something behind them was breathing, slow and synchronized. I took a step. The carpet squished underfoot, damp and warm like flesh. The lights overhead flickered, not in rhythm but like Morse code I didn't understand. I kept walking. One step, then another. Every door I passed, I avoided looking at. But they looked at me. The peepholes blinked. The knobs twitched. Behind one of them, I heard crying. Behind another, laughter. The one beside me moaned low and wet, as if whatever lived inside was pressing its mouth to the wood and whispering in reverse. Halfway down the hall, I stopped. There was a mirror, just hanging on the wall like in any cheap hotel. But it didn't reflect me. Not really. It showed me sitting on a bed. Thin. Pale. Unmoving. Dead, maybe. Or dreaming. And behind me, in the reflection, the girl. Smiling. Reaching. I turned away. Walked faster. The walls began to close in, only a little. Just enough to notice. Just enough to feel like the hallway was inhaling me. Then I came to a door. It looked the same as the others, same brass knob, same peeling numbers, but this one wasn't humming. It was silent. Still. Waiting. I reached out. Trembling. Touched the knob. It was warm. Almost familiar. Like a hand. I opened the door. Inside, not a hotel room. Not a cabin. Not even a dream. It was the road. That dark stretch of highway I hadn't seen since the beginning. Only now it was upside down, hanging from the ceiling like a bat's nest, with trees growing down instead of up and headlights bleeding light into the sky. In the middle of the road stood a sign. It read, "Welcome back." I stepped through the door. The gravity flipped. My feet left the carpet and touched asphalt. My head spun. The girl was there. Beside the sign. Only now, she had no face at all. Just skin stretched over where it should have been. She lifted a hand. Pointed behind me. I turned. All the doors of the hallway had followed me. They now floated midair, circling like vultures. Each one opened. Each one revealed a different version of the cabin. Some on fire. Some underwater. Some filled with hundreds of me, all asleep. All breathing in sync. The girl spoke, voice like paper tearing. There is no alone, not anymore. Then the road split, like the cabin had, and I fell again. Into the dark. Into the core. I landed hard, but not on ground. On wood, old, rotting wood that creaked and pulsed beneath me. A floor, barely. And around me, rising into shadow, the cabin. Rebuilt. But wrong. It was tall now, too tall. Endless staircases spiraling up into fog. Windows without glass, just blackness beyond. The walls bled. Not red, but something darker. Thicker. Like the memory of blood. I stood. The floor groaned beneath my weight, like it didn't want me here. Or maybe it did. Maybe it had been waiting. A door opened to my left. I didn't touch it. Didn't move. It opened inward, into a space that pulsed like lungs. Inside, a chair. A simple wooden chair, with straps on the arms and a rusted metal halo bolted to the ceiling above it. From that halo hung wires. Dozens. All leading into a mirror, suspended mid-air, rippling like water. The reflection inside? Me. Asleep. Hooked up to the wires. Mouth open in a silent scream. I backed away. Tripped over something behind me. It was a hand. No, a dozen hands. Reaching out of the floorboards, pale and blind, groping for my legs. I kicked free. Ran for the stairs. Took them two at a time, the wood buckling and groaning with every step. The cabin was alive. Hungry. Endless. I reached a landing. There was a window, cracked and pulsing. Outside was the forest. Only it was upside down. The trees grew from the sky. And hanging from the branches, people. Copies of me. Swinging. Some twitching. Some whispering. All smiling. The same broken, stitched smile as the girl. I ran again. Up and up. Until the walls grew narrow. Too narrow. Until I had to crawl. The ceiling pressed down. The walls closed in. The wood whispered my name. I clawed forward through the dark. Through splinters and blood and memory. And finally, another door. Not wood. Steel. Burned black. No handle. Just a symbol carved deep into the surface. A spiral. turning inward. Again. And again. And again. I touched it. The door screamed open. And inside, the room was white, empty, silent. At the center, a bed, plain, still, and on it, me, asleep, eyes fluttering, mouth murmuring, dreaming. The girl stood beside the bed. Only now, she wasn't a girl at all. She was me, smiling, waiting. She lifted a finger and placed it gently on my forehead. The sleeping version of me twitched. The real me? I screamed, but no sound came. The dream was folding in. The house was folding in. I felt my skin unraveling, my thoughts leaking, my name fading. And through it all, one word echoed. A whisper. A promise. Stay. The whisper didn't fade. It multiplied, bounced from wall to wall. Stay, stay, stay. The word bled into my skin, crawled inside my ears, coiled behind my teeth. I clenched my jaw until I tasted blood. I was losing myself, piece by piece. And it was still watching, wearing my face, smiling with my mouth. I looked at the me lying on the bed. The chest rose and fell, eyes twitching beneath the lids, dreaming, or maybe drowning. That version of me was hooked to something. Thin silver wires ran from my scalp, my temples, my chest, into the bed frame, into the floor, into her. She was feeding on me. Not flesh, but memory, voice, self. And she was almost done. I stumbled forward. The room fought me. The floor turned slick, rippling under my boots. The ceiling dropped an inch with every step. The light flickered, then burned white hot, searing every shadow from my vision until even the outline of the girl blurred. I reached for the crowbar. Gone. Left it behind. All I had now was myself. And I wasn't sure how much of that was left. The girl tilted her head. Her eyes were mirrors now. Not reflecting light, reflecting me. Dozens of versions. Crying. Screaming. Running. Failing. She opened her mouth. My voice came out. You didn't deserve to live. She stepped closer. You didn't save them. Another step. You didn't fight. I shook my head. No. She leaned in. Whispered. You're already gone. And then I moved. Not away from her. Through her. I lunged. Tackled her. The room exploded in light and sound, screams not from her throat, but from the walls. She writhed beneath me, face shifting, from mine to hers to something else. A face made of smoke and ash and bone. I wrapped my hands around her throat. She laughed. Even as she buckled. Even as she cracked. Even as the bed behind us caught fire. Flames licked up the walls. The white room peeled like paper. And still she laughed. Until finally, she didn't. She shattered. Not like glass. Like ice. Exploding outward in 1,000 fractals of memory and voice and heat. I fell backward into darkness. Again. But this time, something was different. I didn't fall alone. I fell with her. And with every second, I felt more of her peel away from me. More of myself return. And then, light. Real light. Some light. Warm on my face. I opened my eyes. I was back in the cabin. The real one. No spiral. No wires. No girl. Just cold ashes in the stove and a sky beginning to bleed orange through the trees. But I wasn't the same. And I wasn't alone. There were footprints on the floor. Not mine. Bare. Thin. Pressed deep into the wooden boards like the person who made them weighed more than they should. I followed them with my eyes, not my feet. They circled the stove, past the window, stopped at the bed, and then they vanished. No trail out. No open door. Just silence. And that same feeling, like the air had teeth. I stood slowly. My legs ached. My palms were raw. I caught my reflection in the cracked mirror above the sink. At first, it didn't look back. Just stared. Expressionless. Wrong. Then it blinked, just half a second after I did. I smashed the mirror with my fist. Glass rained into the sink. I didn't feel the pain. Didn't care. I just needed the silence. I packed what I could in under 5 minutes. Cans. Flashlight. My knife. The burner phone. I left the books, the clothes, the old journal I never touched. Everything that smelled like her. Everything that whispered. Outside, the world looked unchanged. Frost on the ground. Pine needles twitching in a light wind. The sky overhead like a dead TV screen. I stepped off the porch and heard it. A scrape. A breath. I turned, but nothing followed. Just trees. I didn't stop moving. Not for food. Not for water. The trail I followed wasn't one I knew. It just felt right. Old logging roads. Overgrown switchbacks. The kind of paths animals still used, but people had long since abandoned. I didn't think about where I was going. I just let my boots carry me. Around dusk, I found the house. Not a cabin. Not like mine. A full 2-story farmhouse rotting into the dirt. Paint peeled off in long, curling strips. Windows boarded, but not well. Like someone had tried to keep something in, not out. And above the porch, a single symbol carved into the wood. A spiral. Smaller than the one I burned back home. But deeper. Older. I didn't want to go inside. I was already climbing the steps. Already touching the doorknob. Already pushing it open. The door didn't creak. It sighed. Like it remembered me. The air inside was colder than the forest. Thick. Old. Not musty, not damp, but heavy, like breath held too long. Like the house had been waiting. The hallway was narrow, lined with faded wallpaper curling at the edges. Every step echoed down into the bones of the place. Floorboards groaned, not in protest but recognition. I passed an old coat rack, crooked with age. A single jacket hung from it. Green. Worn. Identical to the one I had back at the cabin. Identical, except this one was soaking wet. I didn't touch it. Didn't stop. The living room was half furnished. An armchair facing the fireplace. A table with 3 legs. Books stacked in impossible piles that reached toward the ceiling like towers of thought. All of them were blank. Every page. Hundreds of books with nothing in them. Not even dust. Just paper. Empty. Waiting. I stepped toward the staircase. At the bottom step, a child's shoe sat upright. Tiny. Red. Torn at the heel. It pulsed once, like something inside it took a breath. I didn't touch it. Just kept walking. The upstairs hallway was longer than it should have been. Each door the same. Old brass knobs. White paint flaking like scabs. Every one closed. Every one humming softly. But not sound. Vibration. Like something behind each door was whispering just loud enough to keep me curious. I kept moving. Until the last door. The only one open. Inside, a room full of mirrors. Floor to ceiling, edge to edge. Dozens. Hundreds. Each one reflecting the same empty space. Except one. The mirror directly across from the doorway didn't show me. It showed her. Sitting on my bed. Back in the cabin. Smiling. Crooked. Rotten. Holding something in her lap. Something bundled in cloth. Something that twitched. I reached toward the mirror, and she looked up, directly at me, miles away, and mouthed a single word. Home. I stumbled back from the mirror, breath caught sharp in my throat. It wasn't a reflection. It was a window. Or worse, a door. The cloth in her lap writhed again. She didn't look at it. Didn't acknowledge it. Just kept smiling, eyes locked on mine through the glass. A smile made of patience. Of promises. Of rot. I turned to leave, but the hallway behind me was gone. Replaced with trees. Tall, black, reaching in from every direction like arms through broken windows. Pine needles covered the floorboards. The ceiling sagged with moss. The walls wept bark. I was back outside, but inside, but nowhere. The house had become the forest. Or the forest had always been the house. Or I had never left either. The mirror behind me cracked. A single spiderweb fracture across the surface. Then another. Then more. And then it screamed. A sound like wind and rust and someone sobbing into a pillow soaked with blood. The glass shattered inward, exploding into the room. From the shards came light. Flickering. Soft. And then movement. Figures. Pale, thin, crawling from the broken mirrors like spiders. Dozens of them. All wearing my face. They didn't speak. Didn't blink. Just crawled, jerking, twitching, too fast and too wrong. Their joints cracked backward. Their eyes were empty. Their mouths hung open in silent screams that never needed sound. I ran. The house folded as I moved. Hallways shrank. Ceilings dropped. Doors stretched into spirals and melted into walls. It chased me, not with footsteps, but memories. Every corner showed me something. My childhood bedroom, wallpaper peeling in the shape of teeth. My college dorm empty except for the bed and a copy of me sleeping in it. My old apartment, lights off, TV static hissing, something standing in the kitchen doorway. Every room I had ever lived in, stitched together with shadows and screaming floors. The house knew me. It was me. And it wanted me to understand. There was no place left to run. I burst through a final door and landed hard on my hands and knees. Snow. Real snow. Freezing, soft, silent. The air hit my lungs like knives. Above me, stars. Real ones. Cold and distant and alive. The house was gone. No porch, no cabin, no hallway. Just woods. Endless, dark woods. But I didn't move. Didn't celebrate. Because across the snow, pressed into the white like it had fallen asleep in the middle of the clearing, was another me. Not a mirror image. not a copy. Just me. Face down. Still. A smear of blood leading away from the body into the trees. I crawled closer, heart pounding. The other me wasn't breathing. But he wasn't cold either. Not stiff. Still warm. I reached out a trembling hand. And eyes opened. Black. Bottomless. Too wide. Too knowing. Found you, he whispered. And the forest collapsed. Not physically. Not all at once. Just slowly. Quietly. Like a page curling under fire. The trees leaned inward. The stars blinked out. The ground pulsed beneath me. Heartbeat. 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 It was inside again. All around. Above. Below. Watching. Smiling. And whispering in my ear with my own voice. You brought this with you. You always do. I stood. Shaking. Numb. Somewhere, a door slammed shut, but there were no buildings, no rooms, no structures. Just that sound. And the cold. And something moving through the snow without leaving prints. I ran. No plan. No direction. Just through the trees, through the snow, through the dark. Branches clawed at my face. Ice tore at my lungs. My legs screamed. But I ran. Because behind me I could hear it. Not footsteps. Not breathing. Just a sound like bones clicking together in rhythm. Click, click, click. Like something smiling while it walked. Eventually I fell. Hit a slope I didn't see and went tumbling, skidding down into a ravine that hadn't been there the day before. I landed hard on my shoulder and lay there gasping. Above, the trees leaned like broken sentinels. Watching. Waiting. And from the edge of the ridge, the figure appeared. Me. But not. The way a dream pretends to remember your face. The smile too wide. The head cocked just slightly wrong. He didn't climb down. He just watched. And said nothing. I crawled back into the trees, digging through the snow like an animal. Cold, numb, bleeding, until I found the highway. Black ice and yellow paint and salvation. A truck passed without slowing. Then another. I stumbled into the road, waving, screaming. And the third one stopped. A woman, mid-40s, nervous, wide-eyed. I barely managed to choke out the word, help. She unlocked the door, and I climbed inside. She didn't ask questions, didn't press, just turned the heat up and drove. And for a few precious minutes, I thought maybe I'd escaped. Maybe it was over. Until I looked in the side mirror and saw the thing behind us, running on all fours, faster than any living thing should move. It didn't need roads. It didn't need reason. It just needed me. And it was catching up. The woman saw it too. Or maybe she didn't. Maybe she just saw my face, because without a word, she floored the gas. The truck roared down the icy road, tires skidding, headlights bouncing in wild arcs over the trees. But no matter how fast we went, the thing kept pace, bounding through the forest beside us. It didn't break branches, didn't leave prints. It just moved, like a shadow trying to remember how to be alive. I screamed at her to go faster. She didn't answer. She couldn't, because her eyes had gone glassy. Her hands gripped the wheel like she couldn't feel them anymore. And her mouth was whispering something. Over and over. Too soft to hear. But I leaned close. And I realized it wasn't her voice. It was mine. Coming from her throat. Repeating the same phrase. Over and over. Let me in, let me in, let me in. I grabbed the wheel. She didn't fight me. She just kept whispering. Her face didn't move. But my voice kept coming. Let me in. I pulled the truck hard off the road, down into the ditch. We hit a tree. The world exploded. When I woke up, the windshield was gone. The woman was gone. The forest was silent. Snow blew through the open cab, swirling around me like smoke. And on the dashboard, a single note, written in my handwriting. Almost. The wind was different now. Not cold, hollow. Like it passed through something that shouldn't be there. I crawled out of the wreckage. The trees stood still as statues, watching. No sign of the woman. No blood. No tracks. Only that note, almost still resting on the dashboard, soaked now with falling snow. I should have rung. Should have screamed. But instead, I stood in the road and listened. Not for sound. For absence. Because that's how it comes. First, the silence. Then the copy. I turned in a slow circle, heart pounding, watching the forest. It could be anywhere. Anyone. Then, behind me, a voice. Small. Familiar. Hey, you okay? I froze. Because it was my voice. Exactly mine. I turned slowly. And there, walking toward me from the trees, was me. Same jacket. Same torn jeans. Same blood on the temple. Same shaking hands. Only the eyes were wrong. Too black. too deep. Like someone had drawn them with ink and just never stopped. It smiled. "Glad you're still breathing," it said. Then it raised its hand. Showed me the hatchet from the cabin. My hatchet. Dripping red. Not with blood, but with something thicker. And moving. It tilted its head, just like I did in the mirror. Then it said cheerfully, "Let's finish this." I backed away. Slow. Deliberate. My other self mirrored me, one step forward for every step I took back. I gripped the tire iron from the wreckage. Not that it would matter. Not against me. "You're tired," it said. Same voice, same breath, same smirk. "It's okay, we don't have to fight, you just have to let me in." I didn't answer. Didn't trust my own voice anymore. Instead, I ran. Bolted into the trees, branches slashing at my face, snow soaking my clothes. I ran until my lungs burned. Until I couldn't hear its footsteps anymore. Until I reached the clearer. A wide open patch of earth, black and frozen. No trees. No snow. Just a single object standing in the center. The door. The same impossible door from the cabin. Tall. Warped. Standing on its own, without support. Waiting. I should have turned around. Should have run. But I knew what would happen if I did. I'd be hunted. Haunted. Copied. Until nothing of me was left. So instead, I opened it. The door opened into blackness. Not a room. Not a tunnel. Just void. A darkness that didn't feel empty, it felt full. Like the inside of a mouth just before it closes. I hesitated. Then stepped through. The world blinked. The cold vanished. The wind died. And I was somewhere else. A hallway, long and narrow, lined with mirrors. Each mirror showed not me, but versions of me. Some older, some bloodied, some twisted into inhuman shapes, grinning wide with mouths full of broken glass. I moved forward, breath shallow. The mirrors began to whisper. "You're nothing without us. You left them. She screamed your name and you didn't answer." I clenched my fists. Kept walking. Each step took more effort, like the floor was pulling at my legs. The end of the hallway shimmered, a pulse of red light like a heartbeat behind a curtain. And in the final mirror, she stood behind me. My double. The thing that had followed me from the woods. It grinned. And lifted something in its hand. My skin. I spun around, nothing behind me. The hallway was still. But the mirror? She was still there. Grinning wider. Holding my skin like a coat. And then she stepped out. Not through the glass. Out of it. Like the mirror was just a thin sheet of water, and she had always lived on the other side. Her eyes were wrong. All pupil. No white. She wore my face, almost perfectly. But too smooth. Too still. Like a mask carved from memory. I backed away. She mirrored me, step for step. And then her voice, flat, calm, final. You're tired. I didn't answer. You've been running so long, and for what? I raised the crowbar. She tilted her head. I could take over, she said. I could finish it. She smiled wider. You could rest. Behind her, the hallway collapsed. Mirror after mirror shattering into black fog. She stepped closer. I didn't let her finish. I swung. The crowbar hit something solid. Bone. She screamed, high and wrong and animal. Glass exploded around us. The void cracked. And together, we fell. We fell into the dark. Not like before. Not weightless. This time, it hurt. Every second felt like tearing through brambles, through wire, through memories not mine. Flashes burned across my vision. My mother's voice begging, a cabin door swinging wide, a mirror pulsing like a heartbeat, a face I didn't recognize were in my eyes. And then, impact. I hit the floor hard, coughing, choking. Wood beneath me. Old wood. The cabin floor. But not my cabin. This one was rotting. Walls bowed inward, like they were breathing. Windows bled fog. And in the corner, her, curled up. Still wearing me. But shaking now. Damaged. Fractured. She looked up, and for the first time, afraid. You don't belong here, I whispered. She hissed. The walls screamed. And suddenly, I saw them. The others. Behind the walls. Behind the mirrors. Trapped. Versions of me. And others. Dozens. Maybe hundreds. Staring. Mouths open. No sound. Their hands pressed flat to the glass. Begging. And then I understood. This place? It feeds on identity. On fear. It doesn't kill you. It takes you. Wears you. And leaves your real self behind. Alone. Forever. Not dead. Just forgotten. I gripped the crowbar. Stepped toward her. Time to end it. Time to take myself back. She moved fast. Not like a person. like a memory, blinking, folding, jerking across space with no weight, no rules. 1 second, she crouched in the corner. The next, she was behind me, whispering in my ear with my voice. I can be better than you. I swung the crowbar. Missed. She laughed, high, glitching, like a VHS tape warping on rewind. The walls pulsed. The floor cracked. Mirrors bled silver down their frames. And all around me, the others started to move. Reflections no longer frozen. They mimicked my motion. Every swing. Every breath. Every scream. But none of them helped. None of them were me. Not anymore. They were copies. Flawed. Broken. Hungry. She lunged again. This time, I was ready. I dropped low, swung up, caught her shoulder. The hit made no sound, just a shiver in the air, like feedback on a dead frequency. She stumbled, stared at me, and her face. Her face shifted. My nose. My jaw. But her eyes, too wide, too black, wrong. She hissed, and every window shattered. Glass flew inward like knives. I hit the floor, arms over my head. Pain flared. Then silence. Shards everywhere. Bleeding light. Bleeding me. I stood. Wounded. Shaking. But real. She was fading now. Flickering like a dying channel. You're not strong enough, she whispered. I raised the crowbar one last time. Then we'll fade together. I drove the crowbar forward. Straight through her chest. No resistance. No blood. Just a sound, like paper tearing underwater, and then she began to come apart. Not fall. Not die. Come apart. Her skin peeled in layers of light and static. Her face melted through 100 versions of me, smiling, crying, screaming, until nothing human was left. Only a silhouette. Only shadow. And then, gone. The room held its breath. The mirrors stilled. My reflections collapsed like puppets with their strings cut. And I was alone again. For the first time in hours. Maybe days. Maybe longer. I didn't know. I just stood there. Bleeding. Shivering. Breathing. Alive. Then the floor cracked. Not from weight. From release. The spiral in the wood began to spin. Not physically, but in my mind. In my chest. The knot unraveling. The story ending. Or maybe beginning. The cabin groaned around me. The air sucked inward. And for a moment I felt it. Everything this place had taken. Everything it had become. All the screams. All the hunger. All the eyes pressed into the walls. And then it collapsed. I woke in snow, face up beneath the stars. The cabin was gone. No ashes. No rubble. Just trees. Silent. Ancient. Watching. And me. Still breathing. Still me. But not alone. Never alone. Because, somewhere, out there, or in here, the spiral still turns. And I still hear it. Sometimes in sleep, sometimes in silence. But always. That whisper. That scratch. That invitation. Stay. Sleep. Forget. Become. I left Maine the next day. Didn't pack. Didn't look back. Just walked until I found a road. Then a truck stop. Then a bus station. Kept going. Through snow. Through states. Through stories. Never stopped moving. Because I knew what happens when you stop. When you rest. When you let your guard down. You let it in. I don't tell people what happened. Not really. Not all of it. I say I had a breakdown. Needed to get away. Needed to reset. They nod. They smile. They think I'm healing. They think I'm better. But I'm not. Not really. I'm just moving. Moving forward. Moving away. From the cabin. From the woods. From her. From myself. Some nights, in a cheap motel off the highway, I'll catch my reflection lagging half a second behind. Other times it smiles when I don't. Once, it blinked when I hadn't. But I don't look long. Don't give it the chance. Because if you stare too long into your own eyes, it stares back. I started writing things down. Not to remember. To forget. To bleed the poison out onto paper before it settles. It helps. A little. Sometimes. Other nights, I just drive. Window down. Radio low. Staring at the lines in the road like they might spell something out if I go fast enough. Sometimes I swear I hear the tap 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 in the engine. Or in the back seat. Or inside my skull. But I don't stop. Not anymore. I saw a girl in Kansas last month. Pale. Still. Staring at me from the tree line behind a diner. She didn't move. Didn't speak. Just watched. And I knew. It wasn't her. But it was. A new face. Same hunger. The spiral never ends. It just starts over. So now I watch. I wait. And I write. Because someone has to remember. Someone has to tell the story. Before it tells itself again. Before the next cabin. The next night. The next name whispered through the door. Because it always comes back. And when it does, you won't be ready. You won't believe. You'll say, it's just the wind. It's just a dream. It's just the woods. But it's not. It's never just the woods. And it's never alone.
The tale is over, but the darkness remains. Subscribe, or stay forever in the silence between screams.